Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Started, man, we ain't gonna stop. We gonna turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey, yo. Tell them turn it up till they can't no more. Let's get this thing shaking like a disco ball. This is your last warning, a courtesy call. Hey, yo. Here comes the danger up in this club. When we get started, man, we ain't gonna stop. We gonna turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey, yo. Tell them turn it up till they can't no more. Let's get this thing shaking like a disco ball. This is your last warning, a courtesy call. I am not afraid of the storm that comes my way. When it hits, it shakes me to the core and makes me stronger than before. It's not a question about trust, but will you stand with us? Can you feel it? Make it real. I think it might wash away tonight. Awaken from this never-ending fight. It takes more than meets the eye. This war we're fighting is not just riding. Hey, yo, here comes the danger up in this club. When we get started, man, we ain't gonna stop. We gonna turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey, yo. Tell them turn it up till they can't no more. Let's get this thing shaking like a disco ball. This is your last warning, a courtesy call. There's a rumble in the floor, so get prepared for war. When it hits, it'll knock you to the ground. When it shakes up everything around. But survival is a must, so will you stand with us? Can you feel it? Make it real. Make me feel it. I think it might wash away tonight. Awaken from this never-ending fight. It takes more than meets the eye. This war we're fighting is not just riding. Hey, yo, here comes the danger up in this club. When we get started, man, we ain't gonna stop. We gonna turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey, yo. Tell them turn it up till they can't no more. Let's get this thing shaking like a disco ball. This is your last warning, a courtesy call. Hey, yo, here comes the danger up in this club. When we get started, man, we ain't gonna stop. We gonna turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey, yo. Tell them turn it up till they can't no more. Let's get this thing shaking like a disco ball. This is your last warning, a courtesy call. I'm in war with the world and they try to pull me into the dark. I struggle to find my faith as I'm slipping from your arms. It's getting harder to stay awake, and my strength is fading fast. You breathe into me.
there, everyone. Welcome to God TV Radio. I'm TTOR, and if you're watching this on the Proverbs Guys Network, primarily their YouTube channel, then congratulations. You've made it to the second part of our read-through series of the Creation Dialogues. But if you so happen to be watching this live on the TTOR FTJ Media channel or the TTOR Rumble channel, which we're restreaming this stream to as well, congratulations, you also made it to part 2. And if you happen to be watching the replay of this after the fact on my Spotify account or on my BitChute channel, you're also welcome as well, although you won't get to be part of the live segment of the show, unfortunately. But hey, we're all here and we're in for a really good reading today. We're going through at least 2, potentially 3 chapters of the Creation Dialogues. But before we get into that, I'd like to bring something very important to your attention. If you're watching this stream either at this point or at some point further down the road when you see me say something or read something that's really cool and you're like, man, where can I find more of this TTOR guy? Well, the answer to that is really quite simple. You simply can find me on my YouTube channel, which you can see right here on screen. The handle is TTOR13. If you like what you hear in today's stream, be sure to go to my channel, hit subscribe, and be sure to watch all the content I put there, because while I do cover religious content on there like I do on here, I cover a lot of content on other subjects there that you won't see on Proverbs Guys, unfortunately. But if YouTube's not enough and you want to follow me somewhere else, there's also my Spotify account, which I could always use more followers on. Full videos go on here, including this particular stream you're listening to. After it is done, and sometime after it is done, it will be on my Spotify account as well. So if you're like one of those people that likes to listen to podcasts on Spotify and you like sharing Spotify podcasts with people, and you really like this stream that you're hearing, or this podcast, if you will, you can share it that way with people. Then, of course, you can find me on my Rumble channel, which, golly gee, I should refresh it to indicate that we are indeed live on Rumble. Rumble is a place where all my videos get backed up, and I also live stream to this channel. So if you're one of those people who's really into Rumble, and you're like, ooh, Justin has a Rumble channel, be sure to follow me there. Share all the links to my videos from there. Share my live streams, including this one, from there. Also, as I previously mentioned, I have a BitChute channel where I have over 2,300 subs. And if we go to the About page of my channel, I have over 820,000 total video views on BitChute. And I'm a verified channel there, which is not easy to do. So if you are interested in following me on a video site where I get a lot more views than I do on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify, well, BitChute's a good place to do that. You won't see this show live on BitChute, but it will be backed up after the fact. And then there's a whole bunch of content on my BitChute channel that you won't find on any of my other channels, because this channel goes all the way back to 2017, I believe. So if you want to see all the ancient history of TTOR, you definitely want to sub on my BitChute channel and start scrolling from the oldest on. And then, of course, another place where we are live streaming this show is none other than my FTJ Media channel, which is a YouTube alternative that is run, well, it's not ran by, but my friend who used to run Joshua TV, Seeking the Truth, he works for FTJ Media on the back end stuff. And it is a great functional YouTube alternative that I definitely take joy in live streaming to as a restream location. So you can always subscribe to me here as well if you'd like to help support a new up-and-coming YouTube alternative. But then that's all we have for now for show and tell. Although I should say, before we go any further, in case you are one of those people who are interested in literature, back in 2022, I put out a book called Hanover. It is an original superhero novel that is basically an alternate reality regarding the magic virus of 2020. And if you are interested in seeing something original that's basically an alternative dimension to the timeline we are in real life, but it's based on a bunch of stuff that was happening back then. I would encourage you to go ahead and go get this book, which you can see is on Amazon. And I'll put the link to this in the chats in case you guys are interested in buying it. So let me just do that right now while we do a little screen. Well, while I'm not screen sharing, I should say. We'll pop it right into Rumble first because that's the first tab that's open. And then we'll pop it here in the FTJ Media tab, just like that. So if you're watching there, you have a chance to access all of that. And if you're watching this on Proverbs Guys Ministries channel, well, there's the link to that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share the book that we'll be reading from today. And by screen share that, I mean just showing you the Amazon listing of it. So that way it's not completely foreign to you. There we go. So we are reading from the Creation Dialogues, 2nd edition. Go ahead and just put that right there. Excellent. Okay, so last week when we did this show, we were reading through the introduction and the epilogue. Today, we're going to be reading through chapter 1, chapter 2, and if I'm feeling really good about it, we might get into chapter 3 today as well. So, chapter 1, without any further ado, is titled Science in Darwin's Time. And this is what it says. Angela's story. In Angela's first meeting with her college advisor, she is quoted Theodosius Dobzhansky's words, "Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution." Angela's advisor then said, "You need this foundation if you really want to understand plants." These quotes, one historical and one hypothetical, both seem true for those who have wittingly or unwittingly accepted evolutionary presuppositions. Once Angela actually gets into the study of biology, however, all she will find is complex design and functional life forms. She will never see any instance of macroevolution in process because it never occurs. If she's to toe the mark for her instructors and advisors at this college, she will have to learn to accept the macroevolutionary presuppositions totally on faith. Emphasis, totally on faith. As an engineer with decades of design experience, I know that nothing in nature can design itself. And just as a friendly reminder, in case you weren't here last week, or if I forgot to say it last week, the author of this book is my friend, Dr. J.D. Mitchell. He is a retired engineer who runs his own creation ministry and puts out works defending young earth creationism in various ways. So when we're talking about someone being an experienced engineer, we're not talking about TTOR. We're talking about TTOR's friend, J.D. Mitchell, just so you guys don't get confused. So anyway, J.D. writes, as an engineer with decades of design experience, I know that nothing in nature can design itself. Every design requires information, and the information is in place only due to intelligent sources. As Angela moves through her biology classes, she will have to accept one fairy tale after another to explain how design can result from the random interaction of matter. Yes, science is based on the study of evidence, but the evidence is interpreted according to the presuppositions. Everyone has the same evidence, but since the presuppositions are varied, the interpretations will also be varied. We could happily end Angela's story at this time by simply having her drop out of this college and enroll at a Christian college that teaches biology with biblical presuppositions. In that case, she would be able to learn what she needs for her career as a veterinarian, and in addition, she would not emotionally upset her family and her church members. At the same time, she would not need to accept the atheistic and deistic presuppositions that are foundational to evolution. And yes, I see you there, Terry is Strange. And yes, I see you, C Science Film Labs. Good to see you guys on the show. The fact is that the college Angela has chosen has decided to indoctrinate their students rather than educate them. Angela's advisor quoted Dobzhansky regarding biology and evolution as at least an important precept, if not a fact. That Dobzhansky's statement was a philosophical position is clear from Dobzhansky's own words, such as, "It would be wrong to say that the biological theory of evolution has gained universal acceptance among biologists or even among geneticists. This is perhaps unlikely to be achieved by any theory which is so extraordinarily rich in philosophic and humanistic implications." And evolution is a process which has produced life from non-life, which has brought forth man from animals, and which may conceivably continue doing remarkable things in the future. In giving rise to man, the evolutionary process has, apparently for the first and only time in the history of the cosmos, become conscious of itself. Dobzhansky is very aware of the philosophic bias for the biological theory of evolution, and his second quote above is a perfect example of an evolutionary faith statement. On page 19 of the Evolution Dialogues, in the body of Angela's story is a photo of the Venus flytrap. One would assume that the authors placed this photo there as an example of the wonders that evolution has created. Creationist explanations for the wonders of living things are ignored. And here's the quotation from that page. Oh, almost bumped my mic there. "The Venus flytrap is a wonder of God's engineering. It has an ingenious method quite different from other plants for getting food. This meat-eating plant usually lives in mineral-poor soils, therefore it catches its food in order to provide the needed nutrients for survival. When an insect touches the tiny trigger hairs inside the trap, an electric signal is sent to the cells on the outside of the trap. This impulse almost instantly causes the outer cells to secrete an acid which breaks down the cell wall. This in turn causes cells to expand, closing the trap at high speed. The more the insect fights, the more tightly the trap closes. 6 to 12 days later, after the insect is digested, the plant receives a chemical signal and the trap opens to await its next meal. Why do animals and even plants have to fight each other for their very survival? Is this really the creation that God described as very good? It is not. All of creation exhibits fallen, oh boy, I'm going to look at this footnote later, fallen aggressive nature due to the actions of Adam and Eve in the original garden paradise. It is unknown whether the complex mechanisms of survival demonstrated by the Venus flytrap were present but dormant before the fall, or were designed within the plant for survival after the fall. Either way, the Venus flytrap is a marvel of purposeful design which gives testimony to the genius behind its creation. And I gotta check the footnotes on this. Oh, wait a minute. Apparently that is a quote from Life, Letters, and Journal of Sir Charles Lyell. Huh. I thought that was from the AAAS book. Whatever. It's a good quote, though. Science in Darwin's time, a period of unprecedented scientific discovery. I have no problem with the historical information in the Evolution Dialogues in Chapter 1, except for 2 points. The first is that the authors fail to mention that many of the men who made these scientific discoveries during Darwin's time were creationists, students of the advancement in science of the 18th and 19th centuries were familiar with men such as Robert Boyle, George Washington Carver, Michael Faraday, John Ambrose Fleming, James Joule, Matthew Maury, Joseph Clerk Maxwell, Gregor Mendel, Samuel F.B. Morse, Isaac Newton, Louis Pasteur, and William Ramsay. These men made great discoveries because they believed the Bible and therefore expected to find an orderly and understandable universe. Carolus Linnaeus devoted his life to classifying plants and animals, and the Linnaean system of classification is still used today. One of his main goals in systemizing the tremendous varieties of living creatures was to attempt to delineate the original Genesis kinds. In other words, the whole point of the animal plant classification system that we have today originally was to attempt to delineate the original Genesis kinds. Because if you read the creation account, God talks about how he made the original kinds, not species, kinds, which in today's classification system would be synonymous with families, which is more than one order above the species level. Species is like a sub-level underneath a family or a kind. But let's continue. The second major point of disagreement is the Evolution Dialogue's author's interpretation of the age of the Earth. Rethinking the age of the Earth. Comte de Buffon, James Hutton, and Charles Lyell indeed did propose, assert, conjecture, and theorize that the world was much older than the record of events and lineages as recorded in the Bible. They and others of the 18th and 19th centuries who made these unbelievable propositions certainly did not have any. Let me reread that sentence again. They and others of the 18th and 19th centuries who made these unbelievable propositions certainly did not have any firm proof for these claims. In fact, today, there is still no scientific proof for these old Earth claims. Radiometric dating methods developed in the 20th century are usually cited by evolutionists as scientific proof for the supposed 4.6 billion year age of the Earth. But radiometric dating and other uniformitarian dating methods are all based on unproven and unprovable assumptions. These assumptions are basically as follows. Number one, the amount of parent material is known at the beginning of the time segment. Two, the rate of change or decay of the measured process is constant and is the same at the... Let me just reread number two. The rate of change or decay of the measured process is constant and is the same as the current measured rate. And presupposition number three, no contamination of the parent or daughter materials has occurred during the time segment. Scores of these types of uniformitarian estimation methods exist that can be and have been used to attempt to determine the Earth's age. These methods are all fundamentally flawed because of the inability to scientifically test the assumptions. In addition, the different methods do not come up with the same estimated age of the Earth. Excuse me. One list compiled by the Institute for Creation Research displays 68 different processes with resulting estimated ages ranging from too small to measure to a maximum of 500 million years. All of these processes result in ages that are far less than the secularly accepted 4.6 billion year age of the Earth. In fact, 2/3 of these estimates result in an age of 1 million years or less, and 1/3 result in an age of 10,000 years or less. Wow, would you look at that? 1/3 of those systems that exist out there that are used to determine the age of things have the Earth and universe being under 10,000 years old. Wow, imagine that. I wonder why they don't talk about those particular methodologies. Go figure. The fact that evolutionists choose to use uniformitarian methods that utilize processes that result in the oldest ages instead of an average or some other combination is an indication of the philosophical foundation for their science. In reality, there will never be enough time for macroevolutionary changes to occur in life forms, but billions of years does make the impossible seem a little more plausible to those open to the evolutionary story. I want to take a pause right there to point out just how true that is. When you look at the concept of deep time, the Earth being 4.5 billion years old, the universe being 14.5 billion years old, basically what you discover if you know science is that we've never ever seen evolution occur in any way, shape, or form other than quote-unquote microevolution. But when you get people to believe that the universe and Earth are billions of years old, and that somewhere way back there in that unobservable past before human beings with the ability to make records of what they observe and see came around, well, then evolution's totally plausible as long as you believe in deep time. Without deep time, nobody would accept evolution because there's way too many problems and fatal flaws with evolutionary theory for it to be believed absent of a deep time belief that accompanies it. But because so many people accept deep time, well, that's why we have what we have in academia, with evolution being the majority opinion of the scientific and academic community, and why deep time is so important to them as well. But let's continue. Let's focus first on Charles Lyell, the founder of modern geology. From a study of the life of Charles Lyell, 1797 to 1875, we can learn how he thought and how he came to believe what he thought. His life is also an accurate reflection on many of the so-called scientific giants of his time. Not only was Lyell and others like him driven by distaste for the excesses of the state-run Anglican Church, but they also felt they were discovering new hidden truths of nature with a capital N, truths they felt minimized or obliterated the need for a creator God. The study of the lives of Charles Lyell, James Hutton, Charles Darwin, Thomas Huxley, and other biblical minimalists is very important for today's Christians. This is because by studying their lives, we can learn that even though they may have at times exhibited competent experimental science, the effect they had on today's world was mostly through the philosophies they developed and promoted, and not through their science. Not everyone understands that so-called natural history or historical science is really not either history or science. The study of origins cannot be a study of history because the past is unproven and unprovable without historical documentation. Secular science supported by naturalistic evolutionary philosophy has no historical documentation to rely on concerning the origin of the universe, Earth, and life on Earth. Therefore, nothing can really be definitely known about origins through the sole use of the scientific method. On the other hand, Christians have God's Word, the only ancient document that provides that history. And since we believe that God would not lie to us, we have good reason to accept his account of the creation as being accurate and factual. With that as a foundational premise, we also find the creation itself can be easily correlated with the biblical account. Give me one sec. Got to turn the light on in here. I was relying on sunlight for a while, but that's fading away outside my house. Let's continue where we left off, though. Charles Lyell was an untiring advocate for uniformitarianism in millions of years. He believed that by presupposing that the present observable geological operations are the key to all past geology, he could forensically reconstruct the past. He rejected any possibility of a major catastrophe in the past, a concept mostly abandoned by today's geologists who recognize that much of the Earth's surface was formed by catastrophic actions not experienced today. It is true that the majority of secular scientists cannot conceive of a worldwide flood, but this is due to their presuppositions, not because of the evidence. It is my opinion that without the influence of Charles Lyell on early 19th century academia, and without the acceptance of his uniformitarian ideas by much of the Christian church, it is doubtful that Charles Darwin would have published his Origin of the Species, 1859. Lyell was a friend of Darwin's and, along with Joseph Hooker, was instrumental in talking a reluctant Darwin into publishing his hypothesis regarding evolution by natural selection. Darwin's earlier book, The Voyage of the Beagle, which documents Darwin's travels from December of 1831 through October of 1836, Darwin dedicated as follows: To Charles Lyell, Esquire, FRS. This second edition, 1845, is dedicated with grateful pleasure as an acknowledgement that the chief part of whatever scientific merit this journal and the other works of the author may possess has been derived from studying the well-known and admirable principles of geology. So, without Lyell's influence, it is quite clear that Darwin would not have had the long ages required to conceive of some sort of macroevolutionary hypothesis. Charles Lyell wrote numerous letters over his career, many of which were reprinted in a 2-volume work by his sister-in-law in 1881, some 6 years after Lyell's death. Titled Letters and Journals of Sir Charles Lyell, anyone who reads these volumes of Lyell's writings should be able to see that his life work in geology was influenced more by his philosophy than by his science. The layman's common sense and experience tells him that the past determines the present, which is exactly the opposite to uniformitarianism, which states that the present is the key to the past. Yet it is so easy to accept ridiculous concepts just because they are promoted by an educated authority. The scriptural geologists of Lyell's time, such as George Young, did not accept those ridiculous concepts and strongly objected to them. Unfortunately, much of the church did and still does accept them. The life of Reverend George Young, D.D., 1778 through 1848, is a counterpoint to Charles Lyell. The reason is Young long ago identified and countered the geological philosophies of Lyell. Yes, uniformitarianism has been mostly refuted since the time that Lyell wrote in the 19th century, but the single aspect of geological uniformity still held by today's secular geologists is that which rejects the worldwide Genesis flood so plainly described in the Bible. In 1838, George Young published his Young Earth Biblical Answer to Lyell and other anti-biblical writers of the time, titled Scriptural Geology, or An Essay on the High Antiquity Ascribed to the Organic Remains Embedded in Stratified Rocks. And thank you, Jamie Russell, for listening in. I appreciate that. George Young was an intelligent, educated scholar who distinguished himself at the University of Edinburgh, especially in mathematics and natural philosophy. Young published 21 books, 3 on the subject of geology. Young was qualified to consider and counter Lyell's uniformitarianism philosophy as he had extensive geological field experience. Author Terry Mortson has written the book The Great Turning Point, Master Books, 2004, that provides more extensive biographical information on Young and 6 other qualified scriptural geologists who were largely ignored by the church in the 19th century and following. I highly recommend Mortson's book to anyone interested in the topic of millions of years and the influence of this philosophy on the church. Today's secular humanist culture and much of the Christian church continues to honor Lyell and his ilk, even though their ideas have been replaced in large part by today's neo-catastrophicism, while unfairly ignoring the work of Young and the other scriptural geologists. Do Christians follow the secularists like sheep to the slaughter? I say no. We should read the writings of Young and Lyell and determine for ourselves what was science, what was philosophy, what is truth, and what is not truth. In Young's scriptural geology, he respectfully mentioned Lyell at least a dozen times, so there is no doubt that Young was well aware of Lyell's viewpoint. And Young logically and scientifically countered Lyell's opinions while steadfastly staying to the biblical account as today's creation scientists attempt to do. Pondering the succession of life. Uniformitarians use correlation to tie together the sedimentary rock layers throughout the world to match their millions of years concept. That is, they correlate sedimentary layers in one part of the world to those in another part of the world, usually through index fossils and or the mineral makeup of the layers. This concept of correlation is based on uniformitarianism and suffers from numerous problems with matching reality. For example, not all the layers are represented in all areas of the world. There are millions of years worth of layers missing in most locations where the layers are found. In addition, fossils continue to provide more evidence each year that the rock record is not a record of billions of years. This is because the life forms found in the fossil record show abrupt appearance, no transitional forms, stasis, and a tendency for expansion of their range of presence in the record with each passing year of fossil discoveries. This range expansion manifests itself in what is often called topsy-turvy fossils by creation scientists. The evolutionists have different names for the phenomenon, such as anomalous fossil sequences, and they usually explain away the improper fossil sequence with what they call reworking. The examples of reworking are becoming more and more ubiquitous. Topsy-turvy fossils come in two basic categories. The first includes those fossils that are initially found lower in the fossil record and assumed to be extinct. Later, they work their way up in the record with additional discoveries so that the presumed locations of time segment boundaries in the column have to be modified or the supposed evolutionary relationships have to be revised. When the assumed extinct organism happens to work its way up to the point of living in the here and now, the organism is renamed a living fossil. Oh, gee, where have we heard that before? There are over 500 identified living fossils extant today. Living fossils strongly deteriorate the credibility of the philosophy behind the so-called geologic column and organic macroevolution. But topsy-turvy fossils are also found expanding from higher locations in the column to lower locations. The overall reality is that there are no indications of evolution in the fossils, and close to identical life forms are found throughout the entire extent of the rock record with increasing frequency. As this occurs, evolutionary paleontologists are left only with the evolutionary presupposition of homology to support their philosophical worldview, and homology has a very wobbly foundation itself. Homology, the study of structural similarities in life forms, is a foundational presupposition of evolutionary paleontology. This situation of topsy-turvy fossils is exactly what the creation model with its worldwide flood would predict and always has predicted. Life was formed initially according to its kinds with the ability for limited adaptation built in due to the information in its DNA. From this vantage point, the fossil record is mainly evidence for a universal catastrophic flood. A few years ago, my wife and I participated in a dinosaur dig in the Badlands of eastern Montana. What really struck me during this dig was the rapidity at which the terrain in this area was being eroded away. Yet the sedimentary layers in which we dug for dinosaur bones and other plant animal fossils are so-called Cretaceous age. That means they are supposed to be 65 to 100 million years old, according to the evolutionary theory and the uniformitarian geologic column. If these layers were laid down over 65 million years ago, it is obvious that they should have all totally eroded away long ago. Remember that the principle of uniformity is supposed to translate the ages of these sediments according to the rates of today. Many uniformitarians have abandoned the concept of uniformity except with regard to its application to a worldwide flood. Catastrophe is more accepted. Reread that. Catastrophe is accepted more and more by secular geologists, such as with regard to the Missoula flood. Finally, think about the concept of correlation again. If the present is the key to the past, then we would not expect correlation for geologic processes over long periods of time. For example, today all over the world, different geologic processes occur at different rates. In some places, sediments are being laid down, and in other places, they are being eroded away and carried into the oceans. Today, no sediments can last long without portions of them being severely eroded. In today's observable world, geologic processes are not forming a worldwide geologically correlated record. If there is indeed correlation today in what is seen in the rock record, then that would indicate a single event, not millions of events over millions of years. This matches the biblical creationist model of a one-year-long worldwide catastrophic flood not too long ago. Correlation logically makes no sense for millions or billions of years of geologic uniformity. The geologic column looks to be quickly crumbling away as a model for long ages. The Bible says in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 6, first of all, you must understand that in the last days scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, "Where is this coming he promised? Ever since our fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation." But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens existed, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also, the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. Darwin makes his contribution. Evolutionists often accuse creationists of claiming that species don't change and they were created in the beginning by God as distinct static species. But that is a straw man argument designed to deflect the focus of scientific inquiry away from the real truth. Amen, Brother Mitchell. That is exactly the truth. And I do hear this claim all the time up until the present day, this present moment, from evolutionists. It is obvious that species do change through natural and artificial selection, breeding, as Darwin knew. There is definitely variability within species, and no reputable creation scientist denies this. An example is in the many varieties of dogs that have been bred by man over the centuries. In the beginning was a basic dog kind that now manifests itself in many varieties, as developed by natural and artificial selection over the thousands of years since the creation. However, after all of these years, all of these species are still dogs. They started out as dogs and have changed over time to be nothing but dogs. This fact tells us that a dog can never be bred to have wings, for example, because the genetic information for wings is not in the dog DNA. Another familiar example is that human children look different from their parents. These children are never exactly the same as their parents, but are still obviously humans, and the science of genetics confirms that they will never be able to naturally sprout wings no matter how many generations are propagated. If we look past the straw man arguments of the evolutionists, we find that creation scientists believe that true science confirms that microevolution, variability, does indeed occur, but that macroevolution, change from one kind to another, has not and cannot occur because of the limits on the information that God placed in the DNA of each kind in the beginning, as described in the book of Genesis. This fact means that our interpretation of reality, our science, indicates that the concept of all of life evolving from a common ancestor over millions of years is a fairy tale. What we see from true science, therefore, matches up to the information provided by God in the Bible. This is what the Christian should expect. Another interesting fact that continues to be reinforced by ongoing science is that the microevolutionary changes that do occur in life forms always tend to reduce the overall capability of an organism to adapt to future changes in its environment. This microevolutionary process is actually de-evolution rather than evolution. This is because the process of change results in a loss of information. In fact, there is no known natural method for the introduction of new information into any genome. In the case of dogs, what this means is that the poodle dog, as an example, can never be expected to re-evolve back to the original dog kind, which had a much greater capability for adaptation to environmental changes. The poodle dog has lost much of the original genome adaptive capability that was in the original dog kind. Evolutionists also use spurious arguments, especially to the unwary, such as our school children, such as since there are numerous examples of microevolution in nature, given enough time, macroevolution must eventually occur. But this is not at all true. Think of it this way. Imagine a railroad track that runs across the United States from coast to coast represents time. Now, the evolutionist will often say that if a locomotive representing microevolutionary change starts at the West Coast and makes even an infinitesimal progress towards moving east, it can eventually make it all the way to the East Coast. It is just a matter of enough time. Therefore, macroevolution is true by this analogy. But this visual model is flawed. A reality representative railroad track analogy would be quite different. In the model representing reality, we would have two locomotives located on the track and sitting at the center of the continent. One locomotive representing microevolution would be headed to the west, and the other representing macroevolution would be headed the opposite direction toward the east. True science shows that the locomotive heading east never moves at all and exists only in the imaginations of evolutionists. The East Coast bound locomotive would be provided billions upon billions of years, but no progress would be seen because macroevolution does not and cannot happen. The West Coast bound locomotive would show some movement representing microevolutionary changes, and the changes might occasionally represent organism survival improvement as the genome is constantly deteriorating from its original perfect state. Those changes helpful to the organism would be considered designed adaptability to allow the organism a better chance for survival in a more challenging environment. This designed adaptability was provided for by the creator in the beginning when the original kinds were created. Naturalism is a philosophy, religion really, that rejects God as clearly revealed in the Bible and in his creation. People who cling to this religion believe by faith that all that exists is nature, and that the universe came to be according to some evolutionary fairy tale. Unfortunately, many Christians have unnecessarily allowed themselves to be influenced by these fairy tales that run counter to their faith in true science. The Bible warns us, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of this world rather than on Christ. Colossians 2:8. In today's culture, naturalism is the basic principle of the world. Don't allow it to take you captive. In his book, The Origin of Species, Darwin wrote, as this process of extermination or survival of the fittest has acted on an enormous scale, so must the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on the earth be truly enormous. Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geologic record. In fact, Darwin devoted all of chapter 10 to this imperfection of the geologic record. If Darwin were alive today, he would, over 150 years later, have to repeat those same concerns. Some estimates are that paleontologists have uncovered and cataloged over 1 billion fossils in the past 200 years. Yet there is no examples in the fossil record of one animal slowly changing into a different kind of animal. Herbert Spencer's and Darwin's use of the terminology survival of the fittest is really a tautology, a needless repetition of an idea in a different phrase. This is because the life forms that survive are defined as the fittest, and the fittest are the ones that survive. Evolutionary theories provide no insight regarding which life forms or species may or may not exist at any time in the future. On page 33 of the Evolution Dialogues, the authors state, However, it becomes clear that Mendelian genetics explains much of the pattern of variation that Darwin observed among offspring. It is on this variation that natural selection operates to bring about descent with modification. Creation scientists would agree that statement explains the process of microevolution that is observed in the living and fossil life forms. They would not, however, agree that Gregor Mendel's work or Charles Darwin's observations provide the slightest proof of the evolution of all life from an ancient common ancestor. All right, guys, that was chapter 1. If you're still here, you are doing great. You are really tuned in and focused on this. But since we're halfway between the two chapters I definitely wanted to read, I would like to, give me 1 second. There we go. I'd like to remind you that if you're interested in following me, TTOR, and all of my original content that you do not find here on the Proverbs Guys channel, then I would encourage you to go right on ahead And go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel with the handle being TTOR13, all lowercase letters. Be sure to follow me on Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to me on Rumble. Be sure to subscribe to me on BitChute. And be sure to subscribe to me on FTJ Media. And if you look in the description box of any video that I have, you can find links to everything that I have in terms of social media, video channels, and other things. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up the next reading, which will be chapter 2, which is called Christianity in Darwin's Time. But let's get our visual aid turned on first. All right, there we go. We are now ready for chapter 2. I see Big Bad Mama say in the comments section, survival of the fittest is considered a poor description of evolution because it is often misinterpreted as strongest or most aggressive. In reality, fitness refers to how well an organism is adapted to its environment and its ability to reproduce. But that's kind of a retroactive assignment, isn't it? Because if an organism survives, then you can retroactively say that it had what it needed fitness-wise to adapt to the environment and to reproduce. But the point that my friend J.D. Mitchell was bringing up is that there's no way to predict evolution-wise which things will survive based on purely an evolutionary standpoint. But we're going to get into chapter 2, which is Christianity in Darwin's Time, which is a very important chapter in the book, The Creation Dialogues. Angela's story. At the beginning of chapter 2, Angela meets with a man named Phil in the campus ministry offices. And here begins in earnest the evolution dialogue's subtle attack on biblical Christianity and the Bible. Angela tells Phil that she assumed that if she were... Let me restart that again. My tongue is so tied today. Angela tells Phil that she assumed that if she were to... Gosh, I can't read, guys. Help! If she went to a representative of the campus ministries, she would receive biblically based advice similar to what she would receive from the Christians she knew and trusted back home. It turns out this was a very erroneous assumption on her part. Most of the original American colleges, e.g. Yale and Harvard, were established as Christian institutions. Today, these same colleges and universities are totally secular. And I would like to point out, before I continue reading, that the college I graduated from, Linfield College, falls into a similar pattern. Linfield College was originally founded as a Baptist college, but if you go there today, like it was when I went to school there, it's totally secular. All the woke lefty stuff that you see promoted in mainstream public universities, it has its place there at that school. It's definitely not the Baptist university it used to be. But enough of that side note. Let's continue on. The decline of these institutions from reliance on God's word to a reliance on the words of men followed almost simultaneously with the acceptance of evolution in millions of years by many compromising liberals and academics in the church. Along with this attack on the literal interpretation of the Bible came the so-called higher criticism that has questioned all aspects of the gospel message. Today, it is not an exaggeration to describe a high percentage of American institutions of higher learning as bastions of Satan. Satan has always used the same technique to lead people on the wrong path away from their Creator and Redeemer. In Genesis 3:1, we read, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?'" Satan's main method of attack in the beginning, and still today, was to attempt to place doubt in God's word in the minds of men. As Angela converses with Phil, he too uses the crafty techniques of Satan to try to get Angela to doubt God's word. Biblical creationists are very aware that besides historical narrative, the Bible uses literary techniques for communication. An aspect of any proper exegesis is to understand context and literary method. It is not logical thinking to attempt to distort those differences in biblical communication styles into a license for people to interpret the Bible any way they want. Phil illogically and incorrectly tries to influence Angela to believe that since the Bible sometimes uses metaphorical interpretations can be called on at whim. The plain facts of the historical narrative of Genesis 1 through 11 and the other references to those chapters elsewhere in the Bible do not allow for the insertion therein to include evolution in millions of years. Millions of years in evolution are nowhere found in the Bible. Does Phil call God a liar when he says, as we see here, Angela, there are some readings of Scripture that are simply not consistent with our expanding knowledge of God's creation? Phil would probably say no, but his deeper interpretations are exactly that. Interpretations based on atheistic and deistic presuppositions. And those who really believe in the religion of evolution are people who do not even believe that there is a God as described in the Bible. The goal of the AAAS is to convince Christians that evolutionary interpretations are science, meaning knowledge, while those biblical interpretations accepted by Christians who rely on God's word are just religion. Phil was attempting to convince Angela that evolutionary philosophy can trump the Bible, and once she accepts that position, her Christian faith will slip into the realm of either inconsistency or else apostasy. One cannot accept interpretations based on atheistic and deistic presuppositions and still be able to accept or properly understand God's word. And that particular paragraph is so true, because the sentence he said about how Phil was attempting to convince Angela that evolutionary philosophy can trump the Bible is actually something that is literally taught by old earth creationists today. If you go to page 327 of the theistic evolutionist Perry Marshall's 2015 book, Evolution 2.0, he literally says that science is a higher authority than the Bible on origins, and therefore we must allow science to settle the matter, to answer the question. So J.D. Mitchell, when he wrote this book back in 2010 and the second printing in 2014, he was not exaggerating at all about how old earth creationists allow evolutionary philosophy to trump the Bible. But let's continue reading. The mention of Leviathan in the dialogue between Phil and Angela reminds me that there are other biblical references to that fearsome sea creature besides Psalm 104. For example, Psalm 74, Job 3, Job 41, and Isaiah 26 provide additional descriptive material that leads creationists using biblical presuppositions to conclude that Phil is incorrect when he describes Leviathan as possibly a whale. Why would a supposedly Christian campus advisor provide students like Angela with only arguments for distrusting the more literal interpretation of the Bible? One would think that a true Christian advisor would, at the very least, provide the literal interpretation as at least an option when discussing origins with students. But alas, this hypothetical interaction between advisor and student is all too realistic, and it represents what would be expected where so many have been evolutionized by the culture and the academic environment that is totally controlled by people such as those with the bias of the AAAS. Christianity in Darwin's time, the seamless blending of all knowledge. The authors of the evolution dialogues are to be commended for not portraying James Ussher as an idiot. Many anti-creationists and old earthers have done this, which is always an indication of their ignorance concerning Bishop Ussher. Secularists may not be aware that Ussher's work, The Annals of the World, was republished in an easy-to-read English version by Larry and Marion Pierce in 2003, the first major English revision since it was published in 1658. Historians should take advantage of the wealth of scholarly information in this book. The authors wrote in the editor's preface of the 2003 edition the following. The format used for the footnotes is explained in the bibliography at the end of this work. In most history books, it is very difficult to tell where the materials came from. Separating the editorials from the facts would challenge even Solomon. This is not true of Ussher's work. It contains more than 12,000 footnotes from secular sources and over 2,000 quotes from the Bible or the Apocrypha. There is very little editorializing, and most editorial comments come from the original writers themselves. End quote. Biblical creationists would expect that Ussher's technique of seamlessly blending evidence from the Bible, secular history, and nature would still be the best way to understand any historical truth. Of course, this is not the belief of most of today's secular scholars and compromising liberal Christians who instead believe that the thoughts of man can supersede the plain reading of God's word. One denomination of Protestants even has the motto, "We take the Bible seriously, but not literally." I always wonder when I see that motto on a sign in front of a church, which particular parts of the Bible that they take seriously. Often overlooked by secular historians and others is that Ussher is not the only one who arrived at a young age for the earth. The Septuagint arrived at a date of the creation at 5270 BC. The Jewish historian Josephus came up with a date of 5555 BC. And using the Bible as a resource, Kepler calculated 3993 BC, and Martin Luther arrived at 3961 BC. In fact, anyone with the incentive can use the biblical chronologies in Genesis chapters 5 and 11 to arrive at their own date of creation. Yes, some apparent gaps and assumptions must be made, and this is why everyone does not come up with the exact same date, but it will normally fall at less than 4500 BC. My calculations arrive at a date of 4114 BC for the creation. That is a far cry from the evolutionary assumption of 4.6 billion BC. And if you ever read my Young Earth Creationism book, which is called Another Inconvenient Truth 2, Defending Young Earth Creationism, I don't give like a starting date for the age of the Earth and universe like J.D. Mitchell did for all those guys. I just give you what the timeline is, which I think, if I remember my math at this point, based on the data provided in Genesis, Exodus, and 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1, which covers the entire time span between the beginning of the earth and universe all the way to the 4th year of King Solomon's reign. The fact that 960 some years have passed since from King Solomon's 4th year of his reign to the birth of Jesus. And since our current calendar starts with the birth of Jesus, it's been 2026 years since he was born. That gives me a timeline of 6,137 years as present. But as J.D. Mitchell showed in the paragraph we just finished reading, a lot of different people came up with some slightly different starting points. And there are apparently gaps in the genealogies based off of one particular passage in the New Testament, and that a lot of people speculate where all those gaps are based on that one definite passage. But even if you accept the hypotheticals, you still don't get an earth and universe that's older than 10,000 years, which is why you hear some creationists say that the earth is somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. A 10,000-year-old earth would not be a problem for creationists to accept, but a lot of ignorant people in the evolutionist and older creationist crowd would mock people like me, like, well, there's these gaps in these genealogies that show that the Bible is a little older than 6,000 years, so clearly the 6,000 years is wrong, like it's some kind of own, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's enough of a sidetrack. Let's get into the world as inferred from the Bible. The explanation in the evolution dialogues for the world as inferred from the Bible is basically correct so far as it goes. Genesis clearly describes God's special creation with plants made on day 3, sea creatures and birds on day 5, and land animals and humans on day 6. The Bible plainly reads that living things were created according to their kinds, and that God saw that everything he created was very good. Genesis 1:31. However, due to what is left out, the evolution dialogue's explanation is misleading in 3 ways. Number 1, the correct exegesis of Genesis is not read to imply that human beings held a special place in the creation only because they were made last. Humans hold a special place in creation primarily because God created humans in his own image. Genesis 1:27-5:1. And God blessed them and directed them to rule over every living creature. Genesis 1:28. In addition, unlike all other life forms, God directly communicated with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Genesis 2:15-17, Genesis 3:8-19. Number 2, the evolution dialogues leaves out several important and critical events of Genesis chapters 1-11 that help to explain the world. Left out is the fall of man when Eve was deceived and Adam chose to disobey God and eat of the forbidden fruit, thereby committing the original sin, which brought death and the curse to the very good creation, Genesis 3. Left out was the worldwide cataclysmic flood, which was the result of every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. This evil resulted in God's judgment on mankind, with only 8 humans surviving and the whole creation suffering because of this disobedience, Genesis chapters 6-9. And left out was God's action at the Tower of Babel, when man's rebellion against God resulted in his confusing the languages of the people and scattering them throughout the globe, Genesis 11. It is not surprising that these events are left out of the Genesis explanation by evolutionists, but it is inexcusable for a book that purports to explain what the Bible says. And number 3, it is arguable as to how many Christian scholars elaborated on the Great Chain of Being. The important point is that the Greek Great Chain of Being was a pantheistic philosophy with no basis in the Bible. Many ideas of men are incorrect, including some ideas of Christian scholars. A plain reading of Genesis explains that life was created according to their kinds and not according to some long chain of simple to complex organisms. Evolutionary and creationist scientists of the 19th century knew that even simple life was very complex. Today, we know that there is no such thing as simple life. It is contradictory for evolutionists to say creationists believe that God created each living kind in a unique act of special creation, page 39, and then say they believe that God had started with simpler organisms and link by individual link had worked up to the creation of humanity. The majority of Bible believers of the 19th century believed as biblical creationists do today. There is no way to interpret the Bible to include simple to complex linkages for the creation of life. Nevertheless, whatever the majority of biblical creationists believed in Darwin's time, it is clear today that the biblical truth matches the current true science on this matter, and that is that God's created kinds were provided at the time of creation in DNA with the ability to adapt, designed adaptability to various environments, but that one kind cannot evolve into another kind because the information for this type of macroevolutionary change is not in the DNA. There is no information that will allow dogs to evolve into cats, dinosaurs, or birds. Humans have been humans since the creation and will always be humans, even though they are degenerating due to birth defects, which are one result of the curse from the time of the fall. Now we get into a section called Natural Philosophy and Natural Theology. I think we're about halfway through the chapter. Let me look. Yeah, we're about halfway there. The section of the evolution dialogues on natural philosophy and natural theology is well written, and I have no major issues with it. However, here again, they left out some very important information. The design argument is easy to accept intuitively. Everyone knows from day-to-day experience how to tell designed objects from things that have their shape and structure due to chance interactions with the environment. William Paley's natural theology is in large part plain old common sense. In my traveling dinosaur and fossil museum is a design section that contains a box with several randomly formed natural rocks and one Indian arrowhead. Even young children have no difficulty identifying the one designed rock in the display box. Another example of how people will believe anything is the argument by evolutionists that although life is very complex and looks obviously designed, it really was not designed. They say that life's design came about due to time, chance, and the laws of matter. A specific example of this type of thinking is by well-known atheist, anti-Christian Richard Dawkins, who wrote, "Biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose." Why does Dawkins write that life only has the appearance of having been designed for a purpose? The reason is that he has presupposed that there is no God, and so it must follow that life must have just happened. Dawkins attempts to convince others that he knows how design in life comes about by claiming natural selection is the blind watchmaker, blind it because it does not see ahead, does not plan consequences, has no purpose in view, yet the living results of natural selection overwhelmingly impress us with the illusion of designed planning. In other words, don't trust your lying eyes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure if Dawkins really believes that natural selection is the source for all design and living things, but his anti-Christian writing and speaking career have brought him a lot of fame and money. He has indeed convinced many that he does know what he is talking about. What he writes and says are stories, fairy tales actually. Natural selection can only select from what is available in the DNA of a life form. DNA is an information storage system similar to a set of encyclopedias or a computer flash drive. DNA cannot create new information any more than a set of encyclopedias can. It is more reasonable to believe that the information in the DNA was placed there by the intelligent designer in the beginning. Natural selection cannot explain the creation of the universe, the creation of the solar system, the creation of the earth, or the creation of the first organic chemicals. How could a protein or a living cell be selected from a rock? Which, by the way, that is literally, if you go to Wikipedia and look up origins or related articles, you'll find that in the abiogenesis page that they have, there's a history section that talks about how basically the first organic life form was a microbacteria that formed on a rock near some hydrothermal vents underneath the oceans. And the reason why they think this and believe this is because some time ago they found a fossilized microbacteria near some hydrothermal vents under the ocean. And so they picked that up and went, aha, this is how the first organic life form came into existence. Yeah, that is real. Of course, now that I've said that, I'm sure they're going to change the Wikipedia page and remove that entry altogether, just like they did with the abiogenesis page before. Because on Wikipedia, the abiogenesis page used to say at the very top that abiogenesis was an evolutionary process. And once I started making videos about it and hammering people on it, all of a sudden, that page's entry got changed and they took out the word evolutionary from the beginning. So now it just says that abiogenesis is a process. So that's also something you need to be aware of, ladies and gentlemen. When evolutionists are being defeated in argumentation by a creationist, they cheat. They change the rules. They erase the information on Wikipedia that disproves their narratives. Evolutionists in the modern day do that all the time. But let's continue where we left off. Natural selection cannot explain the creation. Oh, no, wait, we read that. Scientists have discovered that the Earth and life on our planet could not exist except for the clock-like coordination of many natural laws and constants. For example, if the sun were closer to Earth, life could not exist. If the sun were further away, life could not exist. If everything randomly evolved from nothing over time, why would there exist such laws of nature and the delicate balance of ecological processes we see on Earth? These finely tuned processes are an indication of the intelligent design and providential grace of a loving God. In Job 34:14 through 15, we read, if it were his, God's, intention, and he withdrew his spirit and breath, all mankind would perish together, and man would return to the dust. And I'm going to apologize in advance because we're about to read a name that I don't think I can pronounce. In 1981, mathematicians Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe reached the conclusion from their calculations that it is impossible that life could result from time, chance, and the properties of matter. In fact, Hoyle said that believing life could come from time, chance, and the properties of matter was like believing that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747 from the materials therein. The law of biogenesis demands that life comes only from life and cells only come from cells. This law has never been observed to have been violated in nature or laboratory. Though they are often reluctant to admit it, evolutionists believe that at least once in the distant past, the law of biogenesis was broken in nature, called abiogenesis, and that organic chemicals somehow evolved from inorganic chemicals, or life from a rock. This is also called spontaneous generation and must be accepted on blind faith with no solid scientific evidence. It is helpful to think of a spontaneous generation this way. Imagine you have a living pet, say a dog with you that suddenly dies. At the instant before it dies, it has everything necessary for life. However, once it is dead, it cannot be brought back to life except by a miraculous intervention. It is not our experience that dead things that were once living can come back to life. Yet a life form that just died would be the easiest thing to imagine coming back to life, since it has all of the stuff it had the instant before when it was living. However, evolutionists believe that something that never had life somehow came to be alive on its own. On page 43 of the Evolution Dialogues, a statement is made that is very strange. They claimed that one criticism of natural theology was that the evidence of God found in nature would not convince non-believers. In my experience, if any sort of evidence would convince non-believers to accept God, it would be evidence from his creation. At least this would be true for those people who are analytical thinkers, like scientists, engineers, technicians, etc. It is my observation that one of the shortcomings of most Christian youth programs today is that they regularly ignore young people who are analytical thinkers, so those kids end up leaving the church very early on. These youth leaders have no answers for these types of kids, and they make little or no attempt to get the answers they need regarding the plain biblical teachings of Genesis 1 through 11 and what they are taught in the public schools and by the media about origins. The youth that get the attention are those interested in the arts, music, and social interactions. And I would point out that this is still largely true today, through the present, unfortunately. This is what happened to me. This is J.D. Mitchell talking. This is what happened to me. I grew up in the church but was an evolutionist until age 40. I was unable to accept the accuracy and inerrancy of God's word since there was no consistency between the Bible and the evolutionary dogma I was taught in my formal education. It was not possible to accept the Bible seriously in any aspect until I was shown that by having the proper presuppositions, I could find the consistency between God's word and God's creation. I know scores of other biblical creationists today who would say the exact same thing convinced them. And the result of seeing the light was that they are now able to believe the Bible from the very first verse. The AAAS goal is to convince people that a consistency can be found between evolution millions of years and the Bible. This is impossible unless the Bible is stripped of its underlying truth and artificially replaced with atheistic and deistic philosophies. Any person who thinks that the Creator was scientifically ignorant is not likely to believe that he would provide the key to everlasting life. And I'm going to take a little break right there just to check over on Rumble and FTJ Media. Nobody in the chat over there, but that's okay. We'll get right back to the action here. And I do agree with Proverbs Guy that dinosaurs walked with man at some point in the past. And if they did, then obviously Adam named all the dinosaurs. Yes, this is very true, Stephen. Thank you for bringing this up. However long ago you brought it up. All right, let's keep going. Charles Darwin was required to read Paley's Natural Theology and stated that it was one of the books he most enjoyed in his formal education. Darwin was just as amazed by the human eye as was Paley and stated so in The Origin of Species. Since Darwin's time, we have learned even more amazing facts about the human eye, some of which are: the eye is an incredibly complex organ that moves 100,000 times in an average day. Numerous muscles and tear ducts are in place to keep the eye consistently moist, protected, and functional. Our eyes process 1.5 million bits of information simultaneously and provide 80% of the sensory stimulation sent to the brain. They receive light images traveling at 186,000 miles per hour per second through the iris, which opens or closes to let in just the right amount of light. These images travel through a lens made of transparent cells, which focuses them on the retina at the back of the eyeball. The retina covers less than 1 square inch of surface, yet this square inch contains approximately 137 million light-sensitive receptor cells. Approximately 130 million are rod cells, designed specifically to see in black and white, and 7 million are cone cells, allowing color vision. Finally, the image is sent at a rate of 300 miles per hour to the brain for processing. How could all of this have come about by some step-by-step random chance evolutionary process? End quote. What is even more amazing to me than the human eye itself is what some people will say they believe. For example, Richard Dawkins has been able to publish numerous best-selling books that attempt to refute the natural theology argument by saying, in effect, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it is obviously not a duck. I guess books of fantasy have always been popular, and Dawkins has found a way to make a living. It is a way to make a living, but it's definitely not a God-honoring way to make a living. I pray he comes around to the truth soon, or I fear he will face a terrible judgment. William Paley, 1743 through 1805, and his natural theology made sense in the 19th century and makes even more sense in the 21st. I say hooray for William Paley and for natural theology. Just going to give my ears a little breather, and then we will continue on through this course. We're almost done with chapter 2. Let me check something else really quick. I just got to check on things. I think I heard devices going off around me, and so I'm just checking to see how it's all going. Seems like it's going very, very well. All right, so let's get back to where we were. An evolving sense of history. The Bible tells us that Jesus Christ was and is God. Jesus himself said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. Jesus also said, I am the bread of life. John 6:35. Before Abraham was born, I am. John 8:58. I am the light of the world. John 8:12. I am the gate for the sheep. John 10:7. I am the good shepherd. John 10:11. I am the resurrection and the life. John 11:25. And I am the true vine. John 15:1. Real Christians believe these things are true, and it would not be consistent for them to accept beliefs that are contrary to Jesus' own statements. The Evolution Dialogues documents many Christian heretical beliefs that came to be during the 18th and 19th centuries. That does not mean that these beliefs are valid or that they, e.g., higher criticism, have not all been soundly refuted by conservative scholarship. In Chapter 1 of the Creation Dialogues, I noted that scriptural geologists such as George Young provided contemporary refutations to uniformitarianism in millions of years. The day-age theory, the gap theory, and other compromising explanations required by evolution for the straightforward narrative of Genesis 1 through 11 are shown to be unnecessary and bogus by present-day creation science. And no matter what the consensus or majority of Western scientists believed at the end of the 19th century, those who accepted the concept that religious speculation and faith statements must be kept separate from their empirical studies and scientific conclusions were totally disingenuous when it came to evolutionary theories. Darwin, Spencer, Wallace, T.H. Huxley, and the other evolutionists of the 19th century never had a single empirical observation that showed one kind of life evolving into another kind of life. No subsequent evolutionist has had any better luck at devising or conducting a scientific experiment that proves even the possibility of either abiogenesis or macroevolution. This is all undeniable evidence that evolution is a religion, must be accepted by faith, and therefore is not science. Oh, gee, JD, I came to the same conclusion on my own. Congratulations. Christians have a historically based and verified faith. Why would anyone want to replace a faith with strong evidence for its veracity with a faith based on atheistic speculations and philosophies? That is exactly what the AAAS would have Christians do. The history that was evolving into the 19th century, which attempted to insert evolution and millions of years into the Bible, was evolving only in the minds of men darkened in their understanding. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 18. Darwin's religious views. As mentioned, I do not believe Darwin would have published his Origin of Species book if he had not been pressured by Hooker and Lyell to do so, and if he had not accepted Lyell's uniformitarianism. Darwin was not an evil person in the sense that Hitler, Stalin, or Pol Pot were, but was driven away from the God of the Bible by the influence of his quote-unquote free-thinking father and grandfather. And by his observations of death, disease, and suffering, Darwin was not alone in not being able to understand how a loving God could allow such misery in the world. Today, even Bible-believing Christians have difficulty understanding why there is so much death and suffering in this life. Many people have rejected Christianity in part because of the suffering in the world. The late Charles Templeton published a book entitled Farewell to God in 1996. In this book, he described his slide into unbelief and his rejection of the faith. At one time, Templeton was a famous evangelist and colleague of Billy Graham. Templeton was once listed among those best used of God by the National Association of Evangelicals. In his book, Templeton wrote, "Why does God's grand design require creatures with teeth designed to crush spines or rend flesh, claws fashioned to seize and tear, venom to paralyze, mouths to suck blood, coils to constrict and smother, even expandable jaws so that prey may be swallowed whole and alive? Nature is, in Tennyson's vivid phrase, red with blood and tooth and claw, and life is a carnival of blood." Templeton then concludes, "How could a loving and omnipotent God create such horrors as we have been contemplating?" We earlier learned the Bible says that God created everything and then judged it to be very good, Genesis 1:31. God originally created a perfect world. People and animals ate plants, not other animals, Genesis 1:29 through 30. There was no violence or pain in this very good world. What happened? The answer is provided in Genesis chapter 3, where we learn of the fall into sin by Adam and Eve that resulted in the curse and death. We also learn in Genesis 3:15 the proto-evangel of God's plan for redemption of his creation. Therefore, the Bible provides a consistent explanation for death and suffering, sin, while also God's solution, Jesus. On the other hand, if one believes in millions of years, then this world has always been a deadly place. The question naturally is asked, who or what caused the cancer, other diseases, and violence represented in the fossil record? How do biblical creationists explain this? The Bible has an answer that is consistent with the evidence, and that is the fall and then the worldwide flood of Genesis chapters 6 through 9. As Ken Ham has said, if there really was a worldwide flood, what would the evidence be? How about billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth? As a result of man's rebellion into sin and God's judgment at the Garden of Eden, God has given mankind a taste of life without all of his sustaining presence in a world that is running down, a world full of death and suffering. From the perspective of the Bible, death is not something that has always been around, that is good, and that will always be around. In 1 Corinthians 15:26, death is described as the last enemy. So if evolution is the true explanation of origins, then death was normal and widespread before men evolved. But if death preceded men and was not a result of Adam's sin, then sin is fiction, or sin is a fiction. If sin is a fiction, then there is no need for a savior, and Christ's redemptive work on the cross was for nothing. It is abundantly clear that evolution and millions of years are in no way compatible with biblical Christianity. If you remove the explanations in the Bible for the need of God, for the need for God to come down to die for the sin of man, you are left with a Jesus who is a liar and a lunatic. What kind of religion is that? What kind of religion is that? It is the religion with which the AAAS would like to convince Christians they should be content. Even with all of this death and suffering, the great hope of Christians exists in the gospel message. In John 3:16 through 18, we are encouraged. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Christians have found that there can be good in this life that results from suffering. 1. Suffering can perfect us or make us mature in the image of Christ. Job 23:10, Hebrews 5:8 through 9. Number 2, suffering can help some to come to know Christ. Number 3, suffering can make us more able to empathize with and comfort others who suffer. It is not clear how much time Darwin spent considering the Bible's explanation for death and suffering, but he, like many others of the 19th century, eventually chose to ignore it. That, ladies and gentlemen, was chapter 2 of the Creation Dialogues, a very powerful chapter, if I do say so myself. And I'm just looking at things here, and I think time to remind you guys that if you're watching this live or after the fact and you like what you're hearing here, then I would encourage you to go ahead and follow me on the platforms that I'm on, because I am TTOR. I have my own network of channels, not just of face that you see on Proverbs Guys Ministries on the weekends. Just going to go ahead and make it so. So if you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which you can see right here. The username is TTOR13. There's my Spotify account, which you can see on screen. There's my Rumble channel, which you can see on screen. There's my BitChute channel, which you can see on screen. And there's my FTJ Media channel, which you can see on screen. So with that being said, let's take a little bit of a breather here and look at the comments. I see Mr. RTR86 say, "Amen, brother." And then he goes on to say, "Humans started everything bad. The Bible has always been around, but humans did not always know about it." He says, "Evolution is the best way that mankind can explain the Bible." No, actually, that's not true. The guys that J.D. Mitchell mentions, like the Charles Lyells, the James Huttons of the world, those guys in particular created the concepts of deep time with the intended and stated purpose of getting people to disbelieve the Mosaic geology. In other words, getting people to disbelieve in the creation account, getting people to reject what we read in Genesis, Exodus, 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. The point of the channel, I'm reading comments, so that's why I'm making that mistake. The point of evolutionary theory and the deep time idea that preceded it is to get people to reject what the Bible says about origins and accept this man-made tradition about origins. That's literally the whole point of it, according to those who came up with the ideas. Now he says, evolution is a false God more than an understanding of God. That is definitely true. So he says, suffering is neutral. It's not bad or good. The Bible would disagree with that. But as far as I see your comments where you say you like my channel and you've already subbed to me. I appreciate that. But what is the goal of my account? In other words, what's the goal of TTOR? Well, when I started putting out YouTube videos in 2015, I originally was just an apologetics channel, primarily focusing on creation versus evolution, old Earth versus young Earth creationism, and also being able to prove that the Bible teaches certain things that it teaches by looking at the scriptures that teach it. That was what I originally did, and I still do that today. But over time, I started covering current events and started covering tech censorship, helped people become aware of alt-tech social media platforms that started coming into existence almost a decade ago, and many of which still exist today. And I also started reviewing books and doing all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the goal is still to defend God and his word. And I'm still a young Earth creationist, obviously, because I'm reading a young Earth creationist apologetics book here on stream. And I still fight against old Earth creationism, as can be seen from some of my recent videos on my channels. And I've also in the past, though not recently, done many videos debunking and responding to the stuff put out by evolutionist atheist YouTubers, which is an important work to do because the atheist evolutionist community on YouTube is huge and they have very few people responding to their videos. And so over time, here and there, I've done many videos responding to many different evolutionist atheist YouTubers. And a lot of them, like Sir Sick and Vice Rhino and Pelagia, have actually made multiple videos responding to my videos. Sir Sick is another one. So I have been a thorn in their side. Generally speaking. Now on YouTube, my channel is called TTOR, Truth, the Objective Reality. But you can find it easier by putting in the username TTOR it's TTOR 13. All the letters are lowercase. But if you're looking me up on Rumble or BitChute, or FTJ Media, then it's just TTOR. And then my podcast on Spotify is called Truth, the Objective Reality. So that's how you can find me. And in the description boxes of my videos, you'll find links to my other socials. So that's the easiest way to find me on other places. Wow, we've gone really deep into this. Took us basically an hour and a half to read through 2 chapters of the creation dialogues. And I don't think I can read a 3rd chapter. I'm just not up for it at this point. And I appreciate that you're going to check out my other videos. I love it when people actually watch my videos because, I work hard to make those and put the information in those videos out to the public because I want people to be better informed on a wide variety of topics. Take out the underscore between the R and the 1, and that's my YouTube handle. That's the easiest way to find me on YouTube. I have different social media handles on different social media platforms, so that one's just the YouTube one. I'm just going to refresh my YouTube channel page. You haven't subbed yet. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Not that obsessive. Although I'm sure there's someone out there who is just spying on their YouTube channel page, always refreshing it to see those subscriber counts go up. I can see that as a skit. Yes, that is my YouTube handle. Yes. All right. Well, take a look over at FTJ Media on Rumble. No one in the chat over there. Although someone gave me a thumbs up on my book link. That's good. No one in the chat over on Rumble, which is okay. I'm fine with that. It's just you and me, Mr. RTR86. Just you and me. All right. Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to put some music on while I go get some water. Ooh. That might not be so good. Let me try uploading a new song. Maybe it isn't quite as hardcore. Let's go to Break the Silence. Ooh, here's a good one. Just see how quickly this can upload. It's just a music file, so it should do it pretty quickly. All right, I'm going to play some music, and then I'll be right back to see you in the comments section, Mr. RTR86. Be right back.
That voicemail again last night, the one where I said fine but meant to fight. Left her standing in the rain with half a suitcase. Told myself it was strength, just cowardice in disguise. Check my old boss's LinkedIn this morning. Saw the team photo, my desk filled by someone. Promised I'd build something real. Ended up binge watching reruns, numb and unreal. But the mirror won't lie. Not tonight. I won't be the man who walked away. My regrets burn, but they don't know me. I scream into the void until it breaks. This rage is mine to reclaim. Found my dad's toolbox in the garage today. Rusted wrench, oil stain notes in his handwriting. Me never said sorry either, just fix things. Maybe redemption isn't words, maybe it's showing up again. The past is a ghost, but I'm still breathing. I won't be the man who walked away. My regrets burn, but they don't only. I scream into fight until it breaks. This rage is mine to So I'll call her tomorrow.
I'm back. And since Mr. Hold on, give me one sec. Chat, there we go. Mr. RTR86, I'm going to get you in here, buddy. Let's give you the invite link. There we go. And I'll put the same invite link on Rumble and FTJ Media. Oh, there's Smiles in Court. Just got out from bedtime with the kiddos. Gonna have to restream for the meat of the content, though. Oh, I see. Well, I'll just put this right here. You can join me, Mr. Smiles in Court, since our last encounter was Very good. And put this in Rumble, even though, oh, well, there we go. Put the join link in the chats on Rumble and FTJ Media. And I put it in the chat box. Let me look. You say you're here. You haven't clicked on the invite link, though, because if you did, you'd show up in my sources section. That's okay, though. I got water this time. Ah, that feels good. Man, who knew if reading for an hour and a half straight out loud could do so much work on you? It's good verbal exercise, though. Hold on, let me go check in the because Mr. RTR86 is saying that the link is not clickable, which shouldn't be possible. Aha! He did subscribe to me. Let me go find their stream really quick. All right, and I think this is the right one. Okay, going to the web browser didn't do it. Let me go ahead and check on my phone. As much as I don't like doing that during a show. Yeah, it's clickable on the mobile phone chat. Yeah, I just went and checked the live chat of where you're commenting from, and it's there. Are you watching this on the shorts version of the stream, or are you watching this on the landscape version? I will patiently wait with all this dead air. What other kind of music can I throw in here? Let's go ahead and remove mine. Delete that from the list. Let's delete this one from the list too. Let's get some real music in here. Just kidding. Well, let's get some of the music I was playing recently in intros. And while Mr. RTR86 works on getting into the stream, let's play some music.
I'm just the girl inside, the woman, not exactly who you think I am. Trying to trace my steps back here again so many times. I'm just a speck inside your hand. You came and made me who I am. I remember where it all began so clearly. I feel a million miles away, still you connect me in your way, and you created me something I would have never seen. When I could only see the floor, you made my window a door.
So RT86 says he's here, but the problem is I don't see him in my sources. I'm glad you like the music, man. I appreciate that. Why can't I see him? Because I should be able to see anyone who pops in. Oh, I don't want to refresh my page because I don't know what that's going to do. Okay. Well, since you're here, I guess I'll just resume the music.
When they say they don't believe, I hope that they see you and me. After all the lights go down, I'm just the words, you are the sound. A strange type of chemistry, you've become a part of me. And when I sit alone at night, your thoughts burn through me like a fire. You're the only one who knows who I really am. We all wanna be somebody. We just need a taste of who we are. We all wanna be somebody. We're willing to go, but not that far. And we're all see-through just like glass, and we can shatter just as fast. That light's been burned out for a while. Still see it every time I pass. It was lost in the corners of my mind, behind a box of reasons why. I never doubted it was there, but just took a little time to find. And even when I feel a million miles away, still you connect me in your way, and you created me something I would have never seen. When I could only see the floor, you made my window a door. So when they say they don't believe, I hope that they see you and me. After all the lights go down, I'm just the words, you are the sound. A strange type of chemistry, how you've become a part of me. And when I sit alone at night, your thoughts burn through me like a fire. You're the only one who knows who I really am. We all wanna be somebody. We just need a taste of who we are. We all wanna be somebody. We're willing to go, but not that far. We all wanna be somebody. We just need a taste of who we are. We all wanna be somebody. We're willing to go, but not that far. I'm just the girl inside the woman, not exactly who you think I am. Trying to trace my steps back here again so many times. When I could only see the floor, you made my window a door. So when they say they don't believe, I hope that they see you and me.
All right, welcome, Smiling in Court.
Well, hello.
Welcome to the live show, the aftermath of part 2 of the Creation Dialogues.
Thank you.
You'll have to go back and rewatch the first hour and 40 minutes, roughly, based on what you said over on FTJ Media. So how are we doing this week?
There is
Hello?
yeah. I'm wondering if there's some kind of delay on everything.
I don't think it's on my end. But doing an internet test right now would probably not yield.
Understandable with the internet these days. You pay $100 for cast. Yeah, there's
Well, like
definitely
if you're watching a video when you try to do an internet speed test, or if you're like live streaming like I am, if you try to run those. Oh, wow. There he went. Oh, he's back. He's back. So, Mr. RTR86, do you see the private chat below the video screen? If you do, leave a comment in there. Cutting in and out, bro. That's an improvement. Oh. Diamond Dave. You know what that means, right? It means his name is Dave and he has diamonds.
Oh, somebody left.
He's been popping in and out. I think he's having bad internet connection.
Gotcha.
It's going good. I've worn out my reading voice after an hour and a half.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I caught like 2 minutes of it, and then I've been working on my YouTube channels and watching other YouTube channels, and I didn't realize you were still streaming, but I swung by to check it out. Looks like you're still here.
Yep, I still am. I got a little bit of time left to converse before the show ends. Since you say you're a YouTuber as well, what is your YouTube channel about?
I've got two. I do gaming. One of them. So one of them is completely family friendly. It's Minecraft, and it's a forever world that my wife and I do. I was actually gonna record now, but I saw you guys were on. So that one is family friendly. The other one is a Fallout 4 channel where it's post-apocalyptic America, and I clean trash and I build settlements. I will give a disclaimer on that one though, because I do live stream on that one, and since there are pharmaceuticals and alcohol in the game, it's a bit more. It's not like any adult content like that, but there are references to like smoking and drinking. And sometimes my chat can occasionally use some light profanity, nothing major, but I always give a disclaimer on this channel that the Fallout 4 one is more of that angle, but the Minecraft one is like no swearing, nothing at all. It's just Minecraft.
No, I can totally relate to that because I have another channel that's also a gaming one, but I mostly do like sports games. Like indie sports games or retro sports games with the occasional shooter or the occasional indie horror.
Gotcha.
Mostly family friendly on my gaming channel, but obviously the stuff that's rated M for mature is not family friendly.
Yeah, that's the Fallout 4, right? Like I do have a couple teens that follow, but it's mainly just adults, right? So yeah, that one I always give a disclaimer on that channel. It's not like we're dropping the F-bomb every 5 seconds and there's like no nudity or anything. It's just, there's references to pharmaceuticals. There's references in game to alcohol, smoking. It is a first-person shooter. Bodies explode, that kind of a thing.
You're talking to someone who plays Doom and BioShock and Gears of War and Halo.
Okay, so yeah.
I know all about that.
Okay, yeah. Maybe for the viewers who don't know, I just want to like clearly differentiate because I know people on this channel may not even agree with the alcohol references or like the violence. So if they show up on that channel, they might be shocked. So the Minecraft one is completely family friendly.
So the main one that's family friendly is primarily Minecraft.
No, it's actually my secondary. So I used to be a Minecraft streamer back in 2018. And on Facebook, I was streaming Minecraft and I was making money on it. When I lived in America, I had a Twitch account that was monetized, making a few hundred a month. I was making a few hundred a month off of Facebook in addition to working full time, right? But around 2024, I moved away from Minecraft, streaming Minecraft on Twitch and Facebook, and I moved to making YouTube videos, and that became Fallout 4. That became the main.
Oh, okay.
I lost like 11,000 followers on Facebook when I switched over. So I recently did a rebrand, and I'm starting to like build that up again. I'm still at like 109,000 followers, something like that, but
right, that's cool. Yeah, my gaming channel is even smaller than my TTOR one is, but the people who do sub primarily do so for the sports games. So
that's fair.
Since I have fun doing those, I might as well keep doing them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my stats now. I got a whole 21 subscribers on my Minecraft channel. I started like 2 weeks ago.
Nice. Wish I could do it.
Yeah, and then my Fallout channel, I'm at like 6,000. What am I at? 6,916. Um, really? Yeah, and then like this, like within the past 28 days rolling, so part of this month and part of last month, I'm at almost $900 in revenue.
Awesome.
And then I have a social media consulting business where I teach people like how to monetize. And actually, there's I think Theories of Creation is going to reach out to me at some point to help him build his channel, right? Because I work with not just monetization, but I also work with like conversions and donations and marketing, thumbnails, and all that jazz.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm primarily a video editor in terms of my expertise because my day job is producing full-time TV programs for my church.
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
Social media growth is something I'm still learning because it's always changing in the modern day.
Yeah, well, hit me up if you're ever interested. The one time I do gaming shorts, the one time I upload a short and don't link a related video to it, someone's like, "Where's like, can I get the link to the related video?" And now I have to figure out what video it's from.
Right. Smiles in Court, how you doing? Is the internet holding up now?
Well, I was starting to think that it might actually have been because I was listening through headphones earlier, and I haven't heard any of the delay that I experienced earlier, so it seems to be working out.
Awesome. So how's your week been?
Well, it's over actually. I just started the beginning of my 4-day weekend. 2 days of which are, paid vacation, which pretty awesome.
Sweet. I'm trying to remember what you said last week, and it's not coming to my memory. Oh yeah, that's right. Last week you talked about your past as an atheist. So, have there been any new developments in your life leading up to your 4-day weekend?
Oh, well, I mean, I spent the last, 9 hours getting yelled at for things I didn't do. That was pretty fun. So, yeah, no, not really.
Work or at home?
Oh, at work, of course.
Ah, yeah.
No,
yeah, I know that feeling. Been there, done that.
Yeah, well, it is what it is so far.
Yeah, especially getting yelled at for things that can only be improved by getting a much faster internet.
Yeah,
this is why I'm glad I work for myself. I work for myself now.
Fun story, though. Last summer, my church was going through really, really bad experiences every time we attempted to live stream, and I was getting yelled at a lot for being incompetent at my job. But then in September last year, we switched from the Comcast Xfinity internet we were using at the time, which was like 800 something megabits per second download, only about 110 megabits upload. And we got one of those fiber optic 1 gigabyte packages. So now we're getting like 930 to 940 both ways. Magically, all the streaming problems went away. Wow.
What a shock. You got to spend money.
Well, the funny thing is we actually didn't have to spend any more money than we were to have the Comcast package. So basically, nice. So basically now we're spending the same money for 10 times faster internet speed. It's great. I wish I could do that at home, but sadly where I live, the only thing I can really use is Xfinity.
I'm in the same boat.
I just saw RT's question, but I think he left.
Which question was that?
Oh, what's the difference between Minecraft and Roblox? So Minecraft is like a solid open world game, break things, build things, whatever. Roblox is kind of like that, except you can make your own games within it, and it's a lot more like interactive. And there's a lot of creepy adult men seeking children on Roblox.
Yeah.
That's
That's
not in Minecraft. Like, yeah, Roblox is notorious for that.
But that's more of a problem with the social part of the game. But the back end part is basically a game engine, right?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. I mean, Mojang made Minecraft like it's kind of its own game engine, but I think the difference is like the community and like the type of people that gravitate toward it. Because like in Minecraft has been big, but like the Hermitcraft server made it like really, really popular globally, and they actually work with Mojang now, the creators of Minecraft, right? And so it's because it's just historically been a family-friendly game. There's always been a lot more parental involvement with Minecraft, and even parents play with their kids. Whereas with Roblox, people are just kind of left to their own devices.
Right. That makes
and
sense.
Parents aren't involved in Roblox whatsoever. So
No, it's not. And I actually used to work as a caregiver years ago, and I had a teenage client who actually had Roblox, and so I got to see what it was like to make a game on the back end. And then I would obviously sit there and monitor him while he's playing online, just to protect him from the previously mentioned people.
yeah, I mean, like I almost got into Roblox. I was looking at it, and it's like you can make a lot of money off of Roblox. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of money off of like selling skins and selling games and like selling all sorts of things. But like, I don't know. I like, even though I do a lot of trolling online and I end up in the panelverse on these weird channels, like I just really, I feel like, and by the way, I don't know if you know me, but like I'm not a Christian. I'm Hindu, right? But like one of the things that we agree on, at least everyone I've encountered on this channel so far, is there's a real lack of like morality and especially family friendly entertainment in America, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I went to Minecraft and why I was so successful, is because the majority of people on my page are actually outside of the US, and they're wanting, like, you know, their kids play video games or they play video games, but they want something more wholesome and like family oriented. And like it, and like I've spoken a bit about this before in other channels, but it's like it would bring me so much joy to like be playing, having kids do their homework right in the Philippines and playing, and then some grandma from India in broken English saying "I love channel." You know what I mean? Like it was great. It was great, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know why I ever went away from that. So I'm getting back into it, and already I'm starting to see very slow but very positive results on Facebook.
Yeah, I get that feeling. My small gaming channel, I play a number of indie football games as a running series, and usually for one in particular, Access Football, I usually do like a video review of the games that come out every year, and those videos way overperform compared to like my normal playing of the game videos. So like my channel has 300 and I want to say 60 some subscribers at this point, and yet if you go look at my reviews of those games, there's videos of like 2,000 views, 3,000 views, etc., etc. And those usually are the ones that grow my channel over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just like little niches you can find on YouTube where there's like, they're not a giant audience, but they're really active and always looking for that niche. And so
I'm one of them. I created it accidentally because my first videos, I was bored. The audio quality was trash. The frame rate, well, my frame rates are still trash, but they were worse, right? But what I would do is I would take mods and like I would mess around with them. I'm like, wait a minute, I could just clean trash. And so I started, because I find it very relaxing. So I started just cleaning trash, and it just grew. And then if you go on my live streams, I've got people that do super chats. I got one guy who's gifted almost 30 gifted subs within a month. Like he showed up recently and he's like funding the channel, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I got like 35, 36 channel members now, and a lot of them are hopping on, you know? So it's just ASMR. Like if you watch my videos, it's just me cleaning trash and talking, and it's elevator music. That's all it is, dude. It's like I'm I'm gonna hit 7,000 followers soon, 7,000 subs, and then I'm close to 10K, so I'm still growing.
Awesome. That is great news to hear. I like it when people succeed. Especially today. It's a lot harder to grow than it used to be.
So it's actually pretty easy, I found. Like once I've like figured out the back end, like I spent tons of hours like perfecting it, right? And
Yeah.
then when I like kind of got the system rolling and I got the engine turned on, I realized, wait a minute, this was easy.
Has the engine changed over time that much?
The algorithm, I mean, the algorithm will change, but the key thing to remember is a lot of people, especially in like, and not bashing anybody, but I know like in conservative Christian circles, people always complain about the algorithm, how it's like restricting their viewership, right? And on some topics, yeah, that's true. But 9 out of 10 channels I've done my own personal audits on, like just sat down and looked at, it's not a shadow ban. It's they are angry at the algorithm, and so they're fighting it. But the reality is the algorithm wants you to stay on YouTube so it can serve your viewers ads, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these channels, especially in Christian conservative channels, the topics are about medicine or religion or science or whatever, but then it tries to pull people away to a specific site. And YouTube doesn't want that. YouTube wants you to stay on YouTube. Now, if you work with that algorithm, right, and instead of posting a bazillion links in the comments and like trying to get people to go outside of YouTube, you can put visuals. Like I think Steven puts up a QR code to donate. Perfect. Because that keeps people on YouTube. People are not leaving to go donate, right? You could do visuals of where your website is so people can manually type it out and it's not convenient, but people still stay on YouTube. And they stay longer because they have to pause the video, manually type it out, and make sure it's correct.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
And then a lot of it too is branding and internal marketing and how you set up your videos. Because YouTube wants people to stay on YouTube and they want you to help people stay on YouTube, right? But if YouTube doesn't know what to do with your videos, it can't push it because it starts with a testing phase. It tests it slowly in people's feeds and gauges how it responds. And the more that people watch it, the more it pushes it. But if people don't watch it, then it just dies off in the testing phase.
Basically, yeah. Seems to be a different algorithm, though, for the shorts.
Yes and no. So when it comes to viewer retention, in some ways, yes, because you don't have that long form retention, but in other ways, no. You still need to have shorts that keep people on YouTube. Linking it to long form videos helps a lot. You still need to like entice people to watch it. And my shorts are honestly hit or miss with gaming. Some of them are absolute garbage. And then this one I just dropped like 24 minutes ago, already has 1,300 views. So
nice.
Some of it's timing on when your particular audience is on YouTube, which apparently, mine's getting pushed to people who are not my followers because I forgot to do shorts today and I'm just dropping them now.
Okay. Yeah, that's my experience with shorts, both in my professional job and with my own stuff, is that a lot of these shorts, it seems like they can get hundreds or even 1,000+ views pretty quickly, even if you have a small channel. And I always get way more views for shorts on my works channel and on my own channel than I do on like our regular videos. Way more.
Yeah. And I mean, that's because it's lower retention. The average consumer wants short material, right? So, I mean, it makes sense. I'm projecting this one's gonna die off in an hour or two because I live in Mongolia and it's 11:18 a.m. here. So it's like 11:18 Eastern time in the US. So this is gonna be prime time, but unless people, unless this hits the overnight gaming channel, it's probably gonna stall. Which, whatever. I get a couple subscribers off of it, great. I get more views on it, great. Shorts do have their own strategy.
Yeah, I guess that is the case. It's just so hard for me to do shorts on TTOR stuff because it's like I'm so busy with my day job, and then I'm busy doing the content I already do with both my channels. It's like I just don't have the time to like really nail down some shorts for the most part. Although these AI tools that they're starting to roll out do allow you to create shorts off of your streams, so
that's what I use. I use vidIQ, and that's kind of why they're garbage. Some of them are garbage, some of them are amazing. So.
Well, I know StreamYard has that as a feature now, where once you finish a stream, like the second you finish a stream, you can click a button and it will go through your stream you just finished and create shorts that you can download off of it. And I think Restream.io, which is what we're using for this, I think it has the same feature.
Yeah. I use Streamlabs, so it's a little bit different. But I don't do panels. It's a straight thing, and I actually have to sit down and make time to like sit down and go through Streamlabs because like it's a monthly subscription, but it gives you like a gaming website where you can host your merch and stuff on, and it's literally like like Diamond Dave. If it's like diamonddave.tv as an example, you could type in that link and see the page, and you can click the links and go to my shop, and you could see the stream live. You can donate through the website. It's just, it makes a website for you.
Right.
But, like, it doesn't, I don't think, it doesn't have the option to, like, clip shorts and stuff. You have to, like, do it manually.
Right.
Which is fine. It serves what I need.
Exactly. So, I know you've been sitting here the whole time, Smiles in Court. Anything you'd like to talk about in the last part of the show?
Well, I was trying to update the picture for my profile just for the ugly fun of it. But I guess since we have this other guest on here, not that I'm a host or anything, but you mentioned you were Hindu. I was wondering, did you convert naturally or were you married into it?
Neither. My father is British Indian. I take after my mother.
So he's Indian.
He's British, so he's like a mixed Indian. You might have seen them where they're very like white skin, but they're still not white.
Yeah. Oh, he's Brahmin, huh?
Yeah, well, not quite, no. But yeah, so skin colors does play a role in caste, but it also has to do with like economics, lineage, etc.
Etc. Yes.
There's a lot. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, it is what it is, I guess. I like it, but I mean, it's not necessarily something I can take pride in just because it's not an accomplishment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a place to live, so that's nice. The steppes, right?
Yeah, I'm in Mongolia. My wife's family is Tibetan Buddhist.
That must be interesting for your kids. I mean, which religion do you pick?
I mean, we could do both, but we don't have kids as of yet. My son is from a past relationship. Is 15. He lives with his mother, and to the best of my knowledge, he's not. I wouldn't call him an atheist because in America, atheists are loud and obnoxious. I would say he's a secular, where he's just not religious at all.
Well, that's what atheists used to be back in like the 90s.
Well, I know, right? Well, I would say even in like the early 2000s, because like I remember like in high school going going to high school from 2003 to 2007, like YouTube was just starting to come out, right? And that was a thing then. And then around 2010, I think it was, The Amazing Atheist came out, and he was just like a hardlined, prick.
Goofball.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was one of the first. And then like the new age or new atheists or whatever they're called, they came after. So, but yeah, even when I was in high school, it's just like, oh, I'm not religious. Like, that's what my son is. That's what his mother is. Like, they don't hate religion. They just don't go to church, and they just live their lives, and they just don't care.
It may not matter in the end, but so I'm told. I'm hung up on this British Indian thing. You look rather white to me.
Because my mother's American, and she has brown hair.
Your dad is Indian, yes or no?
He's half Indian. He's half British. He's half white, half Indian.
You're okay. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That usually happens. That's actually a thing in India too. Like, I don't know if you've seen videos or stuff, but like, you'll have
lots of
Indian.
Videos.
Yeah. So like, everybody's
been talking about YouTube and all this stuff, and all these YouTubers going to India and eating street food and ending up in the hospital, things like that.
Oh, Delhi Belly's a thing. Yeah. If you're not prepared for it, you got to be careful.
Yeah, whole game called Pindia, where you have to like go to India and look for street views from some kind of Google camera car and find anything covered with feces or trash, anywhere that's not a
India is just like America in that regard. I've been to some really trash parts of America where it's hell.
Oh, there are definitely trash parts of America. I'll concede that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the same, right? It's anywhere you go.
No, it's not the same, but it's similar, I guess. Trash. I mean, there's trash everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, like, but back to what I was saying. It's like, if you see like very light Indians marry white people, usually their kids come out white, right? Like it's just a genetics thing, right? Because I mean, if you remember Punnett squares from high school.
There's only one way to make white people, and that's to have white people make white babies.
Yeah, but you can also be mixed and have white, and eventually it'll go out.
White in you, but not white. I mean, it takes generations to breed Indian out of you, to breed African out of you, to breed Puerto Rican out of you.
Yep.
It's still in there.
Yep, it's still in there, but I mean, post-colonialism, there's a lot of Indians that married Brits, even after independence in 1941.
Much to their shame, yes. I thought it was about spirituality and things like that. We're talking about YouTube views and playing.
That's my fault.
That's his fault. He brought it up.
No fault included. I'm up for anything. I mean,
I'm the same way. Yeah, it's not a big deal. That's how panels go, and that's why I love this channel, because it can go all over the place.
Yeah, well, I'm all good for it. I have no real skin in the game as far as that's concerned.
I'm just the Saturday night entertainment. That's all.
I just show up and hang out, and it's like I chime in with my thoughts and experiences or any questions I have, and wherever the conversation goes, because I mean, I go on ex-Mormon podcasts because that's a part of my life. I'm waiting for. Yeah, so I was talking with Steven on a couple past shows, and we were kind of tossing around the idea of having me on because Mormonism is similar to Hinduism, very similar. That's why I joined, and.
I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah, and that's something that we were like, nothing is set in stone. It was just like a fun idea we talked about for like 10 minutes, but I would be definitely down for that because there's a lot of similarities. And when it comes to Hinduism, Hinduism is a conglomerate of beliefs that either through warfare, intermarriage, or just general trade, right, adopted other people's beliefs and then became what it is today.
Yeah, I was
And
called a great sponge.
yeah, and like you'll find Hindus or even Buddhists will glom on what?
Christians, or they could be rat worshippers or anything else, as long as it was making them happy, I guess. And
Well, Hinduism, like I mentioned before in the different shows, it's more than just a theology, it's a way of life. And there's even an atheistic, quote unquote, denomination of Hinduism.
I'm sure it is. I mean, the great sponge, I mean, like, you could like purport any belief at all and still be called Hindu.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can actually.
No, you can't. There's very like yeah,
I mean,
you can't,
like,
because
it's
I mean,
all-
like, for instance, if
Dude,
you
I've
if you're
read the Vedantic texts. I mean, like, I understand all this a little bit.
yeah, so you understand the concept of dharma, you understand the concept of dharma between castes, what is acceptable for
I
each
also
caste and what is
understand
not.
the, whole,
Yep.
the concept of karma as being
Yep.
largely misrepresented in the West,
Yep.
where most people in the West would think what goes around comes around. If you're bad, whatever. But according to the texts, no, it's about superseding yourself to the next level of life after your death. This
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, sorry to interrupt.
Amicus is here. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, so at this point, I would like to inform the viewing audience that right as I was about to pull the plug, Amicus showed up. So we'll go another 10 minutes so that Amicus can contribute however he wants to.
Oh, I'm just listening right now. Thanks for having me up. What's up, buddy? How's it going?
What's going on, Amicus?
It's going. I'm making my rounds. What can I say?
I was doing the same thing, and I'm just working on shorts, and then I'm going to record a Minecraft video, and I'm just working. It's not my bedtime yet, so.
But I don't want to interrupt. It sounds like y'all had an interesting discussion going on, so I'm all ears.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Hinduism does have very specific beliefs when it comes to its core, like, I guess you could call it doctrine. Now, anything outside of the doctrine, yeah, as long as it fits. Not just the Vedantic text, but you have the Gita, you have the Kama Sutra, you have the Puranas.
Yes.
So as long as it falls within that core, you can. For instance, a core, like a belief you cannot purport and be Hindu is the eating of beef. You cannot do that and be Hindu.
Oh, man.
Anybody ever hear the song by Green Jello?
Green Jello. Why does that sound familiar?
Obey the cow god. We live in the country. We can't eat beef. Obey the cow god.
I could swear I've heard this somewhere. I can't remember where though.
They made the Three Little Pigs thing from the 90s, and I'm sorry, it was just meant to be levitus and fun. But
No. It's fine because like I was born in 1989. That's why I'm struggling to remember this. It's like I've heard this. I can't place it. I was young when I like heard this song in the 90s.
Well,
can you do the viewing audience a favor and sing that for us one more time, please?
We live in a country. We can't eat meat. Obey the cow god.
Oh man, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they were fun. They did some stop motion, things like that. Actually, since I'm on the topic and I know a little bit more about it, so I was born a little bit earlier than you were in 1989. They were the first band to actually have a full movie before they had an actual album.
Really?
That I know of, anyway. That's what they purport to. They claim this. Yeah, they had all kinds of. Yeah, it's not really. You mentioned earlier what is wholesome or not. It's not the most wholesome stuff, I can concede, but it was fun for sure back when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like age tempers a man. So does marriage.
For sure.
Agreed.
Well, time and experience definitely will do that.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
It
kids.
especially brings you back down to earth if you have unrealistic expectations on certain things.
For sure. And that's why I like living outside the US too, because it's like, I don't know, people in the US, like, the US is a great country. It's a very wealthy country. But people are also very spoiled. And there's a lot of decadence in that country, and there's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
complacency in America that you just don't find in most parts of the world.
Yep, I would testify to that. But boy,
Yeah, it'll take you down your own path of destruction if you don't have discipline, for sure.
Oh, it almost did that with me. It almost did that with me, with like
Yeah,
drugs and
same.
alcoholism. Yeah, so
Yep.
it's like, people here drink a lot, but drugs is no. Don't do that here.
right.
If I may interject, I'm not entirely sure that roughly $40 trillion of debt is a wealthy country. Being a citizen of the United States, I would just want to make that clear.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a citizen too, but the thing about that is it's like, I would agree that's more of a technicality though. When like I'm thinking kind of more like GDP and like poverty line and like quality of life, right? Because even poor people in America have cars, have toilets, have internet access.
Oh,
You
have
know
you
what I mean?
seen TVs lately?
Compare that to the equivalent people in third world countries.
Yeah. So it's like comparatively America is wealthy and there's a lot of, I don't know, like there's pros and cons to every country, right? It's just I tend to, like, when I get on, I tend to more lament at how America has fallen, right?
Oh, it's beyond
That
gone. It's
yeah,
dead.
but that's kind of my angle. That's my angle I'm going down, right? I'm kind of lamenting here that America, the once great nation, is now like socially what it is today, because that's, I think it's a sad testament when someone like myself, who's born in the US, and yes, I've lived in other countries, right? But people who are born in the US are like now leaving the US. And I've seen, and I actually follow quite a few people on YouTube as well as just other social media. There's a lot of like conservatives or Christians or both who are like wanting to leave the US for a more Christian environment, and that's why a ton of them have like moved to Russia.
Oh, you
And
mean
then
less Jewish?
Hmm?
You mean less Jewish?
I don't know about
No.
that.
Question.
No, most of what we see in America's society in terms of its decadence is more of a rebellion against values taught by the Bible than anything else.
Yeah, I was
Jewish-
about to say
The
it's
Jewish part
it's-
is very minimal.
That's pretty easy to understand.
it's turning the back on God, right? And judgment. To me, it's a judgment of a nation. So the further this country gets away from the Word of God, the worse it will get.
And we see it all the time, because that's one of the things that when you talk about Christian persecution in America, a lot of people look at you like you're crazy because you have all these freedoms and you're able to, have your own life. You're able to assemble in the church and do what you do with your fellow Christians. But when we talk about American persecution, it's usually laws and social customs that directly target the specific values taught by the Bible without naming it. So it's like an indirect attack more than a
Here's a hot take. I am of the opinion that the No Kings rallies aren't against Trump, but they're actually against America's traditional values, because America hasn't had a king since 1776.
right.
So
Yeah, well, they're not going to like the second coming of Christ, because that'll be a kingship for 1,000 years, and they're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, that'll be an actual king. Maybe they'll still be around by then. Because that would be funny to see those people responding to Christ's return.
Now,
Well, you remember Christ in the Bible said, "Bring them to me; I will slay them." Maybe that's who he's referring to. Yeah, the protesters of No Kings.
I think you're taking that parable out of context, but that's funny.
No, I think. Well, he's going to rule with a iron fist. I mean,
yeah, he's going to rule with an iron scepter for sure.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's going to be judgment.
Sell your coat, buy a sword, right? Isn't that all part of the same thing?
Huh?
Sell your coat, your cloak, and buy a sword.
Well, that was dispensationally specifically for that time because the intent was to set up a Davidic kingdom, but it didn't happen because of Israel's rejection. So, but I get your point. I think
Israel's rejection. That sounds true enough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they rejected Jesus.
Yeah.
He
Well,
said
praise
that
the Lord.
he said their nation would be destroyed because they rejected him, and that's exactly what happened in 70 AD. So
It's
prophecy
happening now too,
fulfilled.
as far as I can tell.
Yeah, well, Paul said that they would be the way they are for a period of time.
And then at the end times, they become like true believers magically all of a sudden for a good reason. Yes.
They'll figure it out last minute, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll remember. The Word of God says they'll remember whom they had pierced. It will become evident to them. Well, how can it not when Christ is like there in the sky, in glory, coming to set up the kingdom?
And then all the Christians are raptured off. Yeah, then that will be their awakening. They'll be like, oh, crud.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they become the witnesses on earth right up until the conquering. But yeah, anyway, we're at the end of the show, and it was fun. A lot of reading, wore out my voice. Got some good diversity of conversation here. And I look forward to next weekend when we do part 3 of the Creation Dialogues read through. And I think I'll try to have some more open panel topics prepared for next time. Say goodbye, everyone.
Deuces.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.